We're having a great time here at Celebrity Week on Double Dare. We have two great contestants. Say hello to my right to a gentleman who is on a show on Fox called Married with Children, David Faustino.
Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer-engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Jewish Museum of the American West, and Atheists United Studios. Hey, Joey, what do you get when you mix a game show for kids that's seemingly made by kids, hosted by someone who doesn't treat them like kids, and gallons of green slime? The answer, of course, is the groundbreaking, often imitated, never duplicated game show, Double Dare.
We're excited to chat with Marc Summers, a legendary television personality, best known for hosting Nickelodeon's Double Dare and Unwrapped for the Food Network. Marc, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you asking me to be on.
So, is it true that you considered becoming a rabbi before pursuing a career in entertainment?
Well, I was torn. After my bar mitzvah, prior to that, I was doing magic shows and anything I could do to get on stage and perform. And then I do my bar mitzvah, and I thought, well, this is cool. This is entertaining. I'm in charge of this entire, congregation for these, next hour and 20 minutes or so. And I like the feeling. And on Friday nights, believe it or not, after my bar mitzvah, and I was being confirmed, instead of going to football and basketball games on Friday nights, I would go to Friday night services. And I really was enjoying it and got this sort of warm and fuzzy feeling. And I got confused about, well, I like performing and I like making people laugh, but I kind of like the rabbi deal. So I was confused, and I was about 14 years old. And I belonged to a place called the Indianapolis Hebrew Congregation, which was a couple of miles from my house. And back in the day when you could get on your bike and ride and your parents weren't afraid that somebody's going to kidnap you, I did that. I rode my bike over there. And Rabbi Weitzman, who was the assistant rabbi, I knew quite well and was a cool guy. And I knocked on his door at about 3:30, 4 o'clock on an afternoon. And I said, "Can I talk to you?" And he said, "Sure, sit down. What do you want to discuss?" And I said, "Well, I did some research on you and found out that you originally started your career majoring in radio and TV, and then you became a rabbi." And he said, "Yeah, that's true." And I said, "Well, I kind of want to major in radio and TV, but I want to be a rabbi, and I'm confused, and I wanted to know if he might be able to help me out." And he said, "Why do you want to be a rabbi?" And I said, "Because I want to help people." And he said, "Well, here's the deal. As a rabbi, you can help a small amount of people a lot, but if you're in the entertainment industry, you can help a lot of people a little. And quite honestly, I don't think you can go wrong with either one. So I don't think whatever you choose is going to be, a bad direction to go." And I sort of mulled that over for a while and decided, well, okay, I think I want to be a performer more than I want to be a rabbi. And that's kind of how I made that turn to go in that direction. Yeah, it was an important, conversation to have at that point. And not that anybody really makes a career decision at age 14, although I did. And I was always focused and I was always passionate about what I wanted to do. And to this day, at 73, I still am passionate about doing stuff. I just feel motivated to keep moving forward. Peter Marshall was a dear friend of mine, just passed away. And every now and then I'd call him up and I'd say, "Pete, I'm done. I think I want to retire." And he said, "Mark, do not stop. All my friends who stop died. So you can't stop. You got to keep on moving." And Pete was singing and doing stuff right up to his early 90s. He died at 98, I think it was. And I'm glad I took his advice, and I'm glad I'm, continually doing stuff. This last year has been an amazing year. I did a off-Broadway show for 6 months, and then I did a Hallmark movie, a Hanukkah movie. And so I worked a lot this year, and I did two things I'd never done in my life, and it was exciting.
Your rabbi in your childhood was pretty forward-thinking. There's a lot of discussion, I know, in rabbinic circles about, is this performance, is this entertainment, is this higher than entertainment, whatever that means. And I think this idea of like sacred entertainment pertaining to the rabbinate is now kind of accepted. And the idea that your rabbi was saying, well, they're kind of the same in some ways, getting into entertainment with the right sort of mission and the right intentionality and going onto the pulpit, maybe there isn't such a big difference between those two.
It better be entertaining because I think it's harder and harder to bring people to a synagogue. And if you do it, you got to do something to draw them and leave them wanting more. And it's interesting, not that this has anything to do with what we're talking about, but I've talked about having obsessive compulsive disorder for years. And the guy who sort of helped cure me, although I'm never cured, it's like 82% cured, but the other 18% is always floating out there making me crazy. I hadn't seen him in probably 20 years, and he came to my one-man show and said, we're doing a lecture at the university that he teaches, and said, Albert Einstein near in the Bronx, and he said, would you come and speak? And I went, okay. So I went out there and heard an hour and a half of conversations by some of the smartest doctors I've ever heard, but it was all kind kind of negative about OCD. And look, there's not a lot of positive stuff to say about OCD, but it was always this, well, then you do this, and, then the obsessions, and then the compulsions, and it drives people crazy, and this and that. And after listening to it for an hour and a half, it kind of depressed me. And we took a break, and I was the first speaker after lunch. And I got up and said, I've been listening to you guys for the last hour and a half, and you're the smartest people I've ever met, and I have no reason to actually be here, but I'm going to tell you, OCD motivated me. And the reason I'm successful is because of obsessive compulsive disorder, and talked about, quite honestly, the positive side of OCD. Well, they'd never heard that before. And I kind of made it up as I went along. And there was a doctor there and a professor who leads the department at Stanford. So she saw me, and I ended up speaking there soon afterwards on a similar sort of approach. And that's the other thing about giving back. If you can help other people with some knowledge you have on something that's sort of a left turn from what it is I do for the most part, the giving back part is super important. And of all the things I've done in my life, I wrote a book called Everything in Its Place, and it's about my whole life in OCD. And 20 years after the fact, it was published in 1999. When somebody comes up to me and says, I didn't know what I had until I saw you on Oprah, and then I bought your book, and it changed my life. I've had fun throwing green slime at people and talking about, how cookies are made and all that other cool stuff I've done. But when somebody comes up to me and said, you changed my life because of what you wrote about and what you talked about, that's the best reward you can get.
You were born Mark Berkowitz. How and why did you choose Summers as your stage name?
Well, I woke up one morning, and son of a gun, there was this guy named David Berkowitz, and he was the son of Sam. And I was watching Good Morning America, and that popped up. And before I could say, holy, you know what, the phone rang, and it was my agent. He said, you got to change your name. I'm not going to be able to get you a job anywhere. So I said, change my name? I never thought it would change my name. He said, I'm telling you, I can't call up and say, Mark Berkowitz is coming for an audition. You'll never get a job. And so you toy with it, And my wife, whose parents were in the concentration camps for 4 years, wanted to keep the ethnicity of it. And I understood that part. And I worked with a bunch of different names. And back in the day, when I was a DJ, the rule generally was one syllable, first names, two syllable last names. And I tried a million different things. And there was this disc jockey in Indianapolis that I grew up with, who was on WISH radio, and then he went to WABC for a while. His name was Dick Summer. And I admired Dick, and I knew him to a certain extent, and just passed away, as a matter of fact. And I took Dick Summer, added an S, became Marc Summers, and the rest is history. And it's funny, the most anti-Semitic people in show business are other Jews. And I had, a guy at ABC told me that my nose was too big, and my name was too ethnic. Until I changed my name and got a nose job, he would never hire me. So, you do what you got to do. And it was interesting, though, that as soon as I changed my name, I started to work.
Your nose wasn't a problem after you changed your name, huh?
Apparently it wasn't. So, I mean, that's all in the mind of the Jewish executive who's a self-hating Jew, I guess. What can I tell you?
Well, there's a long and rich history of that in Hollywood, for sure.
Let me tell you.
You didn't necessarily want to be a kids show host. Did approaching the role as an outsider perhaps contribute to your success?
Well, I never approached it as you mentioned, as a kid show guy. I always admired Subi Sales was one of my best friends, and Buffalo Bob I knew, and those guys had great careers, but they were kid show hosts. And Subi would say to me, he got pigeonholed. The only reason he took the job on What's My Line is he wanted to prove to people that he was smart and could do other things. And so when I got the job, my feeling was I was either Pat Sajak or Alex Trebek, and I wasn't doing a kid show, and I was going to treat those kids as adults, and it worked for me. I never talked down to them and said in a squeaky voice, "Bobby, do you have a girlfriend?" So I never was condescending in any way. And they liked that. They respected the fact that I treated them as grown-ups, and I would screw around with them from time to time and make some, jokes that maybe were semi inappropriate, but they'd play back with me. And that interaction really worked. And so, yeah, and I think they knew I was for them and wanted them to win. I mean, one of the comments people would say was when they were running the obstacle course, half the time I'd be pushing them up the Sunday slide. But I wanted them to win because it was all about, getting the prizes and going home with cool stuff. And so there was a mutual admiration society. They liked me. I liked them. Focus groups thought, the kids thought I was like some crazy uncle or some older brother. At the time I was 34, but they thought I was like 22 because I looked much younger back in the day. And all those elements worked for me and made the show a success and put me on the map as a host.
I was just watching this morning on YouTube the episode you did with the professional wrestlers.
We're going to find out who's the host after this as Gorilla challenges Bobby the Brain to a cage match.
You got it.
On your mark. Get set. Go!
It's a cage match that leads to a WrestleMania.
My favorite episode of all time.
So do you have other memories that really stand out from those days on Double Dare?
Yeah, I mean, that was probably my favorite episode, but then we did primetime on Fox. When Fox first went to primetime on Saturday nights, we kicked it off at 8 o'clock.
Good evening.
And welcome to Fox!
Tonight, the whole family can dare to win on the game that's filled with spills and packed with prizes. Family Double Dare.
For opening episode, we had Weird Al against Lou Ferrigno, and so we would book people like that. And it was always a challenge because sometimes those people didn't really want to be there, but their agents or publicists forced them to do it because we were such a hot show at the time. Who else did we have on along the way? It was an interesting group of humans that often were on the show. We did an NBA special, an all-star game. It had, all NBA players. That was fun. So, yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe they paid me to do that job. I mean, it was like, I can't believe every morning I got up and got to do that, throw green liquids to 11-year-olds, get them to answer questions, and then, every Friday get a check. Because I would have done it for free, quite honestly. But it put Nickelodeon on the map. It put me on the map, and timing is everything. Kids, they had done focus groups, and they didn't have their own game show. They were watching Prizes Right vicariously with their parents, and Nickelodeon did all this research and found out the kids wanted their own game show. We provided that for them, and the rest is history.
As you mentioned, Double Dare put Nickelodeon on the map. How would you assess the show's impact on Nickelodeon and maybe children's programming in general?
Well, prior to Nickelodeon, everything was sort of, talked down to, and everything had to be educational. And Nickelodeon didn't want that. They wanted it, their motto was the place where only kids win. And they were always it wasn't kids against adults, but the adults always lost when they came on the show, theoretically. And if in a obstacle course or something, the kids would say to me, "If we win, can I slime my dad?" I'd say, "Absolutely," So the kids would get rewarded for doing what they normally would get sent to the room for. And the kids loved that aspect of it. And Nick really had a hook on all that stuff. And the other thing we did as far as casting contestants, if you would go to the Disney Channel, they all were perfect. They had perfectly coiffed hair, and they had blonde hair and blue eyes. We had kids with acne that didn't look particularly great. The teeth were crooked. The hair was spiked in an odd way. And the kids at home identified with that much more than they did with the perfect, actors and or game show kids on Disney. So Nick knew what they were doing. I happened to be the sort of center point of making things go from point A to point B. And then it just grew from there. And there were several other game shows. Mike O'Malley did several. He was really good. Legends of the Hidden Temple, did quite well. And, it's been a great ride for them and a great ride for me.
Yeah, it seems like Double Dare in particular helped like children's programming in general become more kid not kid focused necessarily, but like kid projected, meaning that it felt like these programs were made by kids even if they weren't.
Yeah. Well, we thought about that when we would uh, do rehearsals or testing for physical challenges. We would bring in kids after we get done shooting 5 or 6 shows in a day. We'd bring in kids from the Philadelphia school system or New York or wherever we were shooting at the time, Orlando. Um, and we would let the kids play. And if you couldn't complete the physical challenge 3 times, it never got on the air. But the kids would help us. We would come up with we thought was a good idea. They go, you know what, be better? Why don't you do this? We go, you know what, they're right about that. So we would listen to the kids as well because they knew better. And it was sort of you help us and we'll help you. And we just had the best time doing all that stuff. I mean, I got to tell you, I don't think I've ever laughed as hard as I did when we would do the stunt testing. And also, we got away with stuff. I was doing bad impressions of, Paul Linden, Ed Sullivan. And even in 1986, when we started, kids didn't have a clue who those people were. But they laughed because they thought I was some goofy guy doing goofy stuff. And the one thing I did, believe it or not, in 1986, 87, 88, I did an impression of Ethel Merman, okay? And about 1990, kid in the audience during commercial break said, "Hey, Mark, can I do my impression of Ethel Merman?" It's like, oh my God, this kid probably didn't even know who Ethel Merman was, but had seen me do it. I talked about it enough, and there were no computers back then, but he must have done research in some form or fashion. And after the commercial break, I brought him on, and me and this 11-year-old kid saying there's no business like show business, like Ethel Merman. And I thought to myself, I've accomplished something I've always wanted to do. And, I was just having a ball because, once again, I didn't want to be a kid show host. I just wanted to be a host and have fun. And that's what we did.
So you're saying that Double Dare was educational after all?
To a tiny point. But here's what we learned. In '86, when we went on the air, we could ask questions about nursery rhymes. Hey diddle diddle, cat in the fiddle. We asked a question about that. But it was around 88, 89 when the economy changed and mom had to go to work. And all of a sudden, the kids weren't being read bedtime stories because mom was exhausted when she came up from work and dad was tired. And so they made dinner, did the dishes, put the kids to bed, and that was it. And the questions that we could ask in year 86 and 87, all of a sudden we couldn't ask in 88 and 89 because they were not informed about any of the things that, they used to be read to. And we learned along the way how we had to adjust the questions that we asked because things changed.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Unwrapped. I'm Marc Summers, and today we are hitting the candy store to explore the sourest of sweets and treats.
After Double Dare, you hosted Unwrapped on the Food Network, which explores the origins of American food products like chocolate syrup, bubblegum, cereal, stadium snacks, and retro candy. Did you have a special interest in American food companies, or was this another case of answering a call from the producer?
I kept falling into stuff. For some reason, everybody thought of me as a producer. To this day, I don't know why. I never liked producing. And a dear friend of mine, Roseanne Gold, who had won 3 James Beard Awards with a book first called Recipes 1, 2, 3, and then Desserts 1, 2, 3. She was great, still a friend to this day. And I was in pitching her to do a show based on one of her books. And they kept saying to me during the meeting, well, why don't you do a show with this? It's like, I don't cook. I know nothing about food. What are you talking about? And they had done some research, and apparently the kids who grew up with me back in the mid-'80s all of a sudden were the next, generation going to college and a little bit older, and they wanted that generation to follow me. So they offered me a job called It's a Surprise, about surprise parties. And the surprise was we did it, nobody watched. And we shot about 13 of them, maybe a few more, and it was dying. And, they canceled the thing. And they sent me out to do a thing called the National Team Pastry Championship up in some mountainous town in Colorado. And they handed over a video tape, that's how long ago this was, of a pilot that they did called Unwrapped with a dear friend of mine called Mark Silverstein, who was one of the hosts on the Food Network at the time. And they said, take a look at this and tell us what you think. And they had done, I think, 3 or 4 specials with him. And I watched it and I thought, oh my God, at the time, on A&E, they were doing Biography, and Biography was like the hottest show. And I said, what Biography is to A&E, I think Unwrapped could be to Food Network. And so we shot 13 of them. And originally our time slot was 10:30 on Monday nights. And they put us on 4 weeks in a row, 10:30 on Monday nights, and we died. And the president of the network called me and said, "Look, Mark, you're killing my Monday nights. I'm going to try an experiment. I'm going to put you on at 9 o'clock on Monday nights. And if you do well for the next 9 weeks, I'll pick you up. And if not, sayonara, have a nice life." Well, for whatever reason, at 9 o'clock, Unwrapped kicked butt. And we not only did those 9, but then we shot another 500 plus episodes. One time we were the highest rating, outrated in the most shows produced of any Food Network. And I shot that for, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 years, shot, hundreds of episodes. And then we did a show called Trivia Unwrapped. It was a game show based on the stuff we did on Unwrapped. And I was the first host for the first 3 years of Food Network Star. I was the one who crowned Guy Fieri and a few other people. And so I've had, sort of a varied career doing a bunch of stuff all over the place. But I was at Food Network longer for 20 years. I was at Nick for only 8, but Food Network for 20, both as a host and an exec producer. I exec produced Dinner Impossible, Restaurant Impossible, a bunch of other stuff along the way. So it's been an interesting career. You think you're going in one direction and you come out in a whole different thing, but it seemed to work out.
Did you pick up any cooking skills along the way, or are you still sort of know nothing in that regard?
Ask my wife that question. Yes, I picked up a lot. I think I like barbecuing because it's the one thing my wife cannot do. She gets near the grill and she blows it. But she's much better in the kitchen. My son, who's been a Food Network employee for many years, except producing a billion shows there, he loves it, and he is like top of the line chef. He's unbelievable how good he is in the kitchen. I don't like cooking that much, I'll be honest. I like grilling, but the chopping and making a mess, not interested. So anything outdoors, I'll be happy to do. Indoors, not so much.
Your one-man stage show, The Life and Slimes of Marc Summers, draws from your memoir, Everything in Its Place, My Trials and Triumphs with Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. Why was it important for you to publicly explore your private struggles, both in print and on stage?
It goes back to being a rabbi. I wanted to help people. And I thought, well, if I write a book and it's successful, then it's an easy way to get out there. And the next thing I know, I'm on Oprah, I'm on the Today Show, I'm everywhere promoting the hell out of that book. And in 1966, our confirmation class in Indianapolis went to New York. First time I was there. And we went to see Fiddler on the Roof, first Broadway show. I'm 14 years old and I go, oh my God, what is this? And how do I become a part of that? And so my whole life from that point on, I wanted to be on Broadway. The biggest problem I had is I had zero talent, but I never let it go. So I auditioned for a bunch of shows and, like kids do when they're 13, 14, 15 years old. And I did, Bye Bye Birdie and a million other things in local community theater. And I went through some trials and tribulations. The OCD got bad and got cancer. And then I was in a car accident where I broke every bone in my face and kind of realized that I had beaten death a couple of times. And if I didn't stick my toe in the water and finally fulfill my dream, this was never going to happen. So through a quirky, chain of events, I met a guy who produced Broadway shows. He put me on in a place called, oh my God, what was this? It was a theater in Long Beach Island, New Jersey. I can't remember the name of the theater right now. But I did Vince Fontaine in Greece. And while I was there, I met a guy by the name of Drew Gasparini, who to this day is a great writer and has got shows all over the place, opening in the West End and soon on Broadway. And he introduced me to Alex Brightman, his best friend. And Brightman, who has starred in School of Rock and Beetlejuice and I don't know how many Broadway shows. We got together and Alex and Drew wrote this one-man show for me. And after we wrote it, I went, oh, now what the hell do we do? And they knew people that I didn't. And we opened in Bloomington, Indiana, 12 years ago. And from there, we went to the Adirondack Theater Festival. And then it kind of stopped. And then COVID hit. And then it all sort of went away. And about 3 years ago, got asked to bring it back. And I thought, I'm like in my 70s now. Can I memorize 70 pages and I said, I don't know if I want to do this or not. But they talked me into it. And we did a place in Pennsylvania, heart of Pennsylvania, Amish country, hour outside of Philly. We didn't sell much tickets. It was a 600-seat theater. We were playing to 70 or 80 people a night. It was awful. And I thought, okay, I should quit this. It's embarrassing, and nobody really wants to see me anymore. And they had me booked in Buffalo, and I said, yeah, I'm not doing this. They said, no, it'll be better. All right, I'll do the first week, but after the first week, if we don't sell the place out, I'm going home. Well, Son of a Gun Buffalo knew what they were doing, and they sold the place out. And unbeknownst to me, the Mrs. Doubtfire tour opened in the theater next to us. And the director, Steve Edlin, saw the show one night, came backstage afterwards and said, have you ever thought about doing this off-Broadway? And I said, yeah, every day of my life, but I don't know anybody off-Broadway. And he said, well, I do. He made a phone call to the right people. And 90 days later, I was rehearsing in New York at New World Stages. And then we did it for 6 months. And wow, what an experience. And from that, you never knew who was in the audience. Executives from Hallmark came to see me. And a few months later, I got a phone call that they're producing a Hanukkah movie and they think they had a part for me. And I said, yeah, I don't act. And they went, no, you do. We just saw you do a one-man show. You were acting. I went, okay. And I just started my first movie on Hallmark called Hanukkah on the Rocks that aired throughout December. I think it's still on Hallmark Plus if anybody wants to see it. And so who would have thought in 2024 I'd be doing a one-man show and starring in a movie?
Well, you're never too young to reinvent yourself.
I guess not. I'll be 74 this year. And it's like, I still feel like I'm about 34. But, the fact that anybody even thinks of me in this stuff is mind-boggling. I mean, I shot something that's going to be on Nickelodeon this weekend. They're doing the playoffs for the NFL. And I kick it all off. And I'm throughout the segment for like 3 hours on Nickelodeon doing this NFL slime time football show. And so the phone rings, I pick it up. They want me, I go do it.
Well, thank you for picking up your phone and coming on our show.
Yeah, I was happy to do it. You guys are great.
And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.